Round 9 has been completed, and it's been 5 weeks since our last power rankings. For those that are unaware, our power rankings is based purely on form, and we try to determine the positions with as little bias as we can. It should be noted that this is a form ladder, and although will resemble the official win-loss ladder, there will be differences. Therefore, it should be assumed that a team would beat another team that is positioned lower than them in most scenarios. We would also like to thank Jaded Jedi for requesting the power rankings to make a return, even if it's a lot of mostly unrewarded work. So, without further ado, my name is Ryan from AFL Access, and this is the AFL Round 9 Power Rankings. In 18th position lies Carlton. This placing actually pains me, as I am a firm believer that the Blues have played fairly well so far this year. However, as a form-based ranking, the Blues have copped 2 fairly large beltings in the last 3 weeks, and have wrecked most of the good faith they built up during the first month of footy. If they follow their current trend, they should be back to a competitive side against the Saints, and may have their best chance to notch up a second win and show the coach that they stand by him. The Saints are heavily injured right now and are limping heavily. The Blues need a win to restore the faith in their direction. In 17th spot, unfortunately, sits Gold Coast. They started the year with a lot of promise and honestly are still playing competitive footy, but they've lost their last 5 games by an average of 6 goals, which doesn't indicate good form. They returned back to Metricon Stadium, however, come up against Geelong, so they may have to endure the pain for a couple of more weeks. It should be noted that the Suns have been very watchable this year, and despite their current rough patch, should come out with a few more wins by the end of the year. 16th position goes to St Kilda, who finally succumbed to their crumbling list. The Saints started the year quite surprisingly and looked like a smoky chance to finish the top 8. Injuries to key position players and the loss of important players like Jack Stevens has really tested their depth, and they appear to finally be dropping off the mark. They are still playing with a lot of heart and look like a team who is playing for their coach but simply isn't able to close out games, which is to be expected in their situation. The Saints have lost their last 4 games and may be on the losing end to Carlton this weekend. 15th spot belongs to North Melbourne, as they appear a much more competitive side since the opening rounds of the year. Since moving Jack Ziebell into the midfield, they've looked much more intimidating and their ball use has become much cleaner. They haven't had the results go their way, but they almost beat the Swans last week and gave the Cats a scare the week before, closing to within 12 points with only 5 to 10 minutes of time remaining in the game. North are building, and may just shake up a few teams vying for a top 8 spot later in the season. 14th spot has risen up a rank since we last did our power rankings. Sydney has undoubtedly been playing better since losing Buddy. Their forward line has adjusted nicely, and both Reid and McCartan are looking like good forward targets when he does return. Hopefully his presence doesn't attract the ball too much, as he does his best work when not drawing the ball 80% of the time. The Swans midfield also looks to be moving the ball cleaner, which inevitably moves the ball faster. Interestingly, the last 2 weeks have resulted in some rather unique scores. On both occasions, the Swans have scored 77 points to their opposition's 72 points. Can they keep the trend rolling? Melbourne have risen to 13th position and are looking to regain some of last year's form. They still have massive conversion issues when trying to generate scoring shots per inside 50, which is a rather worrying trend for them. Still, they've won 2 of their last 3 games and are showing signs of improvement every match. They will no doubt cause some troubles for finals-bound teams at the end of the year, especially as they regain some defenders and can have full access to their midfield again. I think it's probably too late for them to make finals now, but I expect them to get very close. 12th position sees a newcomer in Fremantle. After starting the year on fire, the Dockers have lost their last 3 games and have played some shocking footy. Their losses have been very small, mostly in part to the overall scoring in games they are involved in rather than being lackluster. Whilst they have the shackles on this team with regards to their defensive game plan, I fear they won't be able to kick a winning score for the rest of the year. Fremantle are at their best when they are playing a free-flowing footy and allowing their players to be at their damaging best. The Dockers should be aiming for a top 4 finish this year with the talent on their list, but are instead only hoping to make finals. 11th sees the inconsistent Bombers as no one quite knows what to make of their season yet. They have patches where they look like the best team in the competition, and then they have patches where they look like the worst team in the competition. Too often we've heard the phrase, depending which Bombers side turns up today to determine the result of a game, and it's indicative of where this club is at right now. They've been slightly hampered by injuries, but their roller coaster of a year needs to straighten out if they are to be taken seriously. In 10th position sees the also inconsistent Western Bulldogs. They have patches of games where they look like the team that won a premiership in 2016. Their contested ball has become a feature once again this year, and they appear to have a functioning forward line with Aaron Norton leading the charge in only his 2nd year. He needs a lot of support though, and their backline is still a concern. For the life of me, I cannot figure out why some players are in the positions they are on the field. If Beveridge wants some flexibility in his team, then he should be sending players to the VFL to learn their craft, not doing it in games of AFL. Just outside the 8 is the ever frustrating Hawks. After playing a masterstroke game against the Giants 2 weeks ago, the Hawks never looked in the game after quarter time against Richmond. They are still ticking over the wins to still threaten for finals action, but they are very inconsistent, not just from week to week, but in games as well. They've had some bad luck at stages this year as well, being demolished in final quarters in 2 occasions after only having half a bench available to them. Clarkson is a master at this game though, and his coaching genius has been on display when his players can execute the basic skills, something they were unable to do on the weekend. I expect them to come out and really trouble a limping Port Adelaide on the weekend. Rounding out the top 8 sits the aforementioned team, Port Adelaide. Losing 2 of their last 3 games and being decimated by injuries lately, they managed to win against the Suns despite not having a genuine captain on the field. Out of favour at the start of the year, Dougal Howard was awarded the captaincy on the weekend and led the way to a gritty win. It took until after half time for Port to click into gear and place some decent scoreboard pressure on Gold Coast. Beyond that, they've looked mostly unimpressive in the last few weeks, and will need everything they have if they want to beat Hawthorn on the weekend. 7th position goes to their crosstown rival, Adelaide. They've responded to a poor start to their year, but would still be disappointed in some aspects of their game. They probably should have beaten Brisbane on the weekend, but left it too late in the game to mount their last charge, and fell 1 agonising point short. They've looked rather impressive in recent weeks, especially after dropping Josh Jenkins. Their ball movement has looked a lot faster, and their forward entries have been purposeful and direct. This week against West Coast will be a good test, and if they come away with a win, we may have to start talking about their premiership credentials once more. 6th spot was a bit tricky to place, but we decided on Brisbane for a couple of reasons. They've been a bit patchy over the last 5 weeks, but have still looked impressive at stages, and have still been getting wins. They are currently 6-3 and are in a good position to make finals with their softer draw in the back end of the year. My only concern for the Lions is their leaky defence. They've conceded the 5th most points in the competition at an average of 88 points per game. If their midfield can apply just a bit more defensive pressure to help out their backline, they may be pushing for a top spot come finals. Just outside the top 4 is West Coast, who are slowly improving the longer the season goes on. Their scoring output has drastically dried up compared to last year, but their defence is looking as elite as always. The midfield has picked up some slack over the last few weeks, as they look to be a more contested team and aren't allowing opposing midfields to run over the top of them. They play Adelaide in Adelaide this weekend, and it will be a good test to see how much they've switched on from the start of the year. In 4th spot, the Tigers are purring. They've somehow defied the odds after an early season scare. Despite the heavy injuries to their list, they've won 4 of their last 5 matches, and their young players have been surprisingly good so far. They haven't set the world on fire, especially compared to last year, but are doing what's expected and getting wins on the board. They'll be better in the long run as well once some of their senior players return to the side, and they can make a genuine push for top 4 in the back half of the year. It's the Dreamtime match this weekend, and it will be a really good test for the Tigers. Third position goes to GWS. Despite being completely outplayed against Hawthorn 2 weeks ago, the Giants have been travelling along nicely. They go to the MCG this weekend after their debacle against the Hawks only 2 weeks ago, and have a chance at redemption on this hallowed turf. It's really the only blemish and doubt surrounding the Giants this year, and if they can get over the top of a Melbourne team coming into some form, they may just cement their credentials at a premiership tilt this year. In second place are Collingwood, who have barely put a foot wrong this season. They've continued their form from last year's grand final appearance and haven't allowed any demons to follow them into this year. They had some trouble shaking the Saints on the weekend until they kicked up a gear and showed the competition what they can do. They did the same against Carlton the week before, and it's been a bit of a worrying thing for them this year. Whether teams are just dropping off in the last quarter or Collingwood are finally kicking into gear come the 4th term, the Pies need to get better at shaking off the lesser teams in the competition earlier in games, or this may come to bite them against quality opponents. To no one's surprise, Geelong sits in top spot for our power rankings. We majorly got our pre-season predictions wrong with this team, as they appear to be cruising to victories and sitting a game clear on the win-loss ladder. Boasting the best attack and defence in the competition, the Cats look to have no weaknesses at this stage. It is only May though, and they've had some injury concerns to some of their senior players in Selwood and Dangerfield in recent times, but their lesser players are stepping up. The injection of youth has renewed this team and look like a team enjoying their football, which is very intoxicating to watch. Do you agree with our list this week? Let us know if you think we misplaced your team in the comments below, or come join our Discord server to discuss it with us in depth. The link is in the description below. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell to receive notifications when new content comes out. We do have a weekly live show airing on Thursday nights called Footy Rivals, so be sure to check that out as well. This has been your AFL Access.